Friends, cricket has no religion, yet it is religion of many. It is a gentleman's game. Distinguished speaker for the day, my dear friend, colleagues, and viewers. We are also honored and pleased that amongst us we have many cricketers taking part in this webinar throughout the country, and I extend my heartfelt salutations and greetings to them. I also give a warm welcome to all my fellow lawyers, chartered accountant, company secretaries, cost accountants, and other distinguished corporate people who are participating in today's webinar. It is an honor and privilege for me to welcome you all to this Friday evening's webinar. As you know, today's webinar is on the subject matter, leadership and management lessons from cricket. We are extremely fortunate that today amongst us, we have an eminent personality who happens to be not only an ex-cricketer, but an able leader and a motivator who has donned many hats. I take this opportunity in welcoming Shishir Hatangdi, as lovingly we call in cricket fraternity, Shishir Bhai. Before I proceed to formally introduce Shishir Bhai, let me take this opportunity to communicate on the following. Today, before you all, friends, I am not as a legal professional, which you know, but perhaps would be donning the hat of an ex-cricketer. And on a lighter night would be discussing on laws, but not of the jurisprudence, but of cricket, as rules are known as the laws of the cricket. Personally, I was fascinated by the game of cricket as my father was an ex-cricket administrator of Bihar, and I grew up idealizing my master, Sunil Gavaskar, who is like a god to me. I played this game for a period of 15 years, playing till the highest level and the club cricket. And whatever people skills I have acquired is because of cricket. And with authority, I can say cricketers are natural leaders and managers, and a lot can be learned from cricketers. Well, now that I proceed to introduce of our distinguished and eminent speaker, Shishir Hatangdi is a former Indian first-class cricketer who played for Bombay cricket team from 1981-82 season to 91-92 season. Let me tell you, even in dreams, it was not easy to get into that era of Mumbai team at that point of time. But Shishir not only played, but also captained with grace the prestigious Mumbai team. Post retirement, Shishir has contributed a lot to the game of cricket in his various capacities, and some of which include being the selector of Mumbai Cricket Association, head of cricket with Mumbai Indians, director cricket Deccan Chargers, member of Cricket Improvement Committee, being a cricket analyst with Cricket Info, CNN, and other prestigious media networks. At present, he is a CEO of Baroda Cricket. He was a batsman of top echelon and famed for reading swing. He holds a distinction of scoring an unbeaten 323 in the inter-college final at the Wankhede Stadium. And at the age of 19, he was playing the Ranji Trophy, opening with the great Sunil Manohar Gavaskar. With that, I thank Shishir Bhai for instantly accepting our invitation to talk about leadership and management lessons from the cricket. Shishir Bhai, on behalf of Udan Saluters, I extend a very warm welcome to you and I extend a many thanks to you. Now it's all yours, Shishir Bhai. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rishikesh Bhai. It's so kind of you to have invited me for this. B, of course, to give me such so much of praise, which sometimes I feel is unwarranted. I'm just another foot soldier of the game, and there's so many. But it's always nice to hear good things about yourself because that's our human tendency, and especially when the arc lights have gone away from you and you're a retired cricketer, somebody says good things about you. It's human for us to enjoy it, and I must say I've enjoyed it. But you've been very kind. Thank you so much. I'd like to start by, of course, saying that cricket for me was not, in a sense, something that I was born with, in terms of talent and in terms of ability. It was more my passion to play the game that gave me an opportunity to put everything aside and focus on just loving and playing the game I loved. I wasn't very talented, neither was I very skilled at it, nor was I naturally sort of didn't have a natural physique to go about and play the game. It had to be about the passion. It had to be about hard work. It had to be about just pursuing something you felt unconditionally about, and not expecting anything in return. So, in a sense, cricket happened to me because I chose it, and I decided not to worry about what cricket gives me, but worry about what I can give the game. And I gave it a lot of effort. I gave it a lot of passion, and with given the lack of natural talent, I must say that I've been very, very fortunate. I got opportunities, and I got a chance to deal with so many different cricketers, to understand them, and of course to interface with them over so many years, maybe 20 years, and that taught me a lot about management, about the way one plays the game, one adapts to people. Uh, Today, we are going to obviously talk about leadership. How did leadership happen? And I'll be honest about it. Leadership happens when people who decide for you or who are watching you, the custodians of the game, the selectors, the administrators, they look for somebody who can, in a sense, maximize efficiency in a team. Uh, right from my school days, I think I was lucky to have coaches. I was lucky to have administrators who maybe felt that I had the ability to maximize the efficiency of a team to achieve goals. To achieve goals, as in, to win cricket matches. And I'm always going to make this comparison in this talk about of comparing cricket and any other walk of life. So, yes, you may have questions later on, but the fact is that I'm just trying to go into history a bit and tell you exactly what it is. Uh, when you're a captain or when you are perceived as a captain, you're looking for the right people to do the right job. So when you're given a team of players, uh, there are certain players who are very good at certain things, and you try to slot them. It's like much like a jigsaw puzzle where you're trying to slot the right pieces to make sure that you complete the jigsaw. And take the jigsaw as a game of cricket, which is going to be fitted in various parts to have a conclusive end, and the end is to do well or to win a game of cricket. So the idea is to look for the right people for the right job and set goals for each person. Sometimes that a certain player has a maximum performance of, say, 75 on 100. Now, if you can get 70 on 100 out of him, you can say you've done a good job in terms of motivating him, and of course to make sure that he gives the best to you as a captain. Finding a plan is also the most important, one of the most important facets of achieving results for your team. Now let me dwell back a little bit, and I'm going to be extempore, so I want to flow with history and of course the game of cricket. In the good old days, in the 40s and 50s, what you had was you had leaders. Why was cricket played in India? Cricket was played in India because it was a good sport to bridge the communication gap between the British and the royalties. The royalties, were patrons of the game because they believed that they could bridge the gap between cricketers and players. And this is where I think a lot of royalties encouraged cricket. So by default, you'll find that they became captains. Uh, the Bhupinder Singh of Patiala or Vizhinagaram, or or the royalties that led India in the good old days. I'm talking about 1930s and 40s. What did they do? They were good diplomats. They were good storytellers. They were good cultured men who knew how to project India in the right possible way to the British, because it is a British game. It is a British creation, the game of cricket. Sooner or later, you realize that these leaders were only good as diplomats. They were not the greatest of cricketers. And that is where I think the game transformed with the Nawab of Pataudi. The Nawab Pataudi was a leader because he was also a fantastic cricketer. I mean, imagine, I can't see through a lot of things with one eye, and he played the best of bowlers with one eye. So he was respected, A, for his ability, and also the fact that he had the blue blood in him and the ability to adapt to the common man. So the Nawab of Pataudi, in a sense, was the path-breaking captain for Indian cricket who brought India together. India that was multicultural, India that was, of different mindsets, India that was economically different, and yet an India that wanted to play cricket to win. So that was the sort of leader he was, where you looked up to him, you were inspired by him, and he was an inspirational leader because you felt that he could do what he was talking about. Often you'll find leaders that, give a lot of gyan, bhashan, talk, sermons, but how do you know that he's just a good speaker, he's a good storyteller, he will not be able to deliver himself. I think times changed from the Nawab of Pataudi downwards into current times, where the leaders themselves were not only good storytellers, but they could also sell well. Sell well as in deliver numbers. In marketing or in sales terms, it is called as, being a good salesman. But salesman in cricket is about delivering numbers, about scoring runs, taking wickets, taking catches, setting the right fields. And also the fact that these leaders post Gavaskar, Wadekar, Kapil Dev, Dhoni, I miss out a lot of them, but they set examples because of their own performances. So players started delivering for captains and making sure that they lived up to the captain's expectation of them. So in sport, you were required in the years to come to set an example. You were required to be able to have the passion as a leader, the enthusiasm to communicate, and of course, the will to win. What you see in Virat Kohli today is an ability, a need, a desire to want to win. And wanting to win is about setting examples. He sets his own standards, expects everybody to emulate the standards he sets, not only on the ground, even in practice. Because what you do in the practice eventually is going to translate into what you do on the ground. So he sets the standards, he ensures that every player has this ability to, or a desire or the passion to look up to the leader and perform. So, times have changed now where, the leader himself has to be loved by his team. There's the old adage about I play for my company, I play for my badge, I play for my country. It's all well said. But the fact of the matter is, on ground, you play for your leader. And if your leader is respected, if your leader is looked up to as somebody who can give his right arm for you, you will do that much for him. You will give your right arm for him. You will make sure that you stretch yourself to deliver for him. And that is where I think leadership has evolved over the years, at least in my field, and that is sport. The leader has to be a certainty in the team. No team is picked first where the leader is picked and then the team. It is a team that is picked first, and the leader then comes from that given team. So the best, usually what you find is you have to evaluate every quality of a leader, whether it is his ability to win matches, his ability to deliver, understand players, his ability to get the best out of his teammates. There is a sense of integrity, there is a sense of humility, there's a sense of influence, positive influence, resilience, and of course, getting your processes right is so important as a leader. What do you want to do? You want to win a game, but is it as easy? No. You have to first think about the plan A, think about plan B, because you see, most leaders will prepare you for a victory, which is fair, but it's important to prepare you for losses also, and to prepare you to come out of those losses. That's a good leader for me, because eventually you will lose. It's sport. In life, as you win, you will lose. All of us want to win, but remember, there is somebody at the other end who wants to defeat you. And on a given day, he will defeat you. And if you can come out of that with a plan B, where your leader says, okay, just let's forget what happened and let us move on. Let's go. This is where, and be very brutally honest about the way you may have let yourself down in the last outing and you've lost the game. Uh, there's no point being critical. There's no point being personal. Take the flak as a leader on behalf of the team. And that is where I think somebody, like Ravi Shastri, people say a lot of things about him, but the fact is, Ravi Shastri may have a different language to speak within the dressing room, the locker room, but out into the world, he is defending his team. He's making sure that nobody touches his team, nobody criticizes his team. At, at some point in time, he gets aggressive, yes, but I'm quite sure that what he has to say to the team in terms of improving themselves or setting standards or shredding off their defeat and moving on would be said in the confines of a dressing room, not to the public, because that is for public consumption. What you talk to a team is within the locker rooms. And I think that's where Ravi Shastri has taken a lot of flack from the media, from people saying, he's always defending the team. But which leader doesn't want to do that? A captain will always defend his team. A coach will always defend his team, because what he says to the public is much different from what he tells the players. You can't deny the fact when you've lost a game, you've lost it for certain reasons. How do you pick yourself up is important. Today's day and age, I think leadership in sport is about playing for your captain, playing for liked by the captain, deliver for the captain. Those good old days where people talked about, I'm playing for my team. Yes, you are playing for the team, but it is your captain who decides for you, who motivates you, and you play for him, because if you can deliver for him, he's going to be happy about it. Time and time again, we've heard about players talking and sport winning. We want to win. We want to win. I'm repeating myself here because I believe that leaders in every walk of life need to prepare their team for failure, because the ones who prepare themselves better for failure will be the ones who will win the derby, the long race. That is where you will deliver numbers. That is where you will have confidence in your captain, in your leader. And you can take examples of Kapil Dev. Kapil Dev motivated his team. He was a very rustic kind of person. He came from the outbacks of Haryana, and went on to become India's first successful World Cup captain. So there is a history, but there is also a spirit that he ignited in every cricketer in India to say, my captain comes from the back streets of Haryana. Look at where he's achieved and what he's achieved. He is inspirational. So his leadership was inspirational in a sense. There were so many young cricketers in rural India who wanted to be like him, because they said to themselves, if Kapil Dev can do it, I can do it. And that is where you got the inspiration. And so many of them, like Dhoni, Mohammad Kaif, so many of them came in from places like Ranchi and Kanpur, and look what they achieved. I mean, there's so many cricketers. Cricket did not belong to metros anymore. And this is where I believe that you need to look at motivating people who have the desire to achieve. Sometimes it's always difficult to motivate people who are well fed and happy, because they have nothing to play for. They have nothing to deliver. But somebody who wants to deliver, has a desire to move up in life, they actually deserve the opportunity to deliver. I think my talk is more about a cricketing space where I have observed leaders. And this is where I think most of the listeners would like to have a conversation, a Q&A, because, at the end of the day, I want to also learn from you. Leadership is not about knowing everything. Leadership is about trying to imbibe something from everybody who is participating, and trying to go home a little wiser, a little more sensible, and of course, understanding the nuances of leadership better. So I want to thank Rishikesh Bhai for bringing me here. And of course, now I'm looking forward to a conversation that can be very engaging, interactive, and of course, very constructive. Thank you so much.
So, Shishir bhai, some of the questions which are coming, I'll try to club it together and put across to you.
Sure.
And some of them are relating to the subject matter of leadership and management, while on the other hand, some are relating to the cricketing techniques, what many kids would be loving to hear from you. Third, I will be selfish. I will not leave this opportunity without asking you some of the questions which I feel will be of immense benefit to the youngsters, especially in terms of the technique, because being an ex-cricketer myself, I feel
Yes.
ki if you can just guide on them, it would be very good. First question is, how important is pivot for a leg spinner? The transfer of body weight from the waist movement when they are releasing the ball. Can you guide it on that subject matter?
Uh, Pivot is probably, the lifeline of any spinner. Whether it's a leg spinner, off spinner, whatever. Because that's where you get. I mean, I'm not a coach, but I'm very observant about great spinners, and uh, everything comes from the bracing of the front leg and the movement of the hip. And if you see all great bowlers, the pivot actually decides the amount of turn that they can derive, the bounce that they can derive, because it's like, whatever you eat, it all goes into your stomach. Similarly, whatever you bowl, it comes from that pivot. And that pivot decides the magnitude of your skill. And if you look at any great bowler, right, from the Subhash Guptas to the Jim Lakers, to Headley Verity, to Bill O'Reilly, to Shane Warne, to, to Anil Kumble, their strength has been pivot. So, for any young cricketer, if you want to raise your game, you want to raise the bar for yourself, focus on the pivot. And, that is where I say, you need to keep watching some of the great spinners, the Bishan Bedis, the Prasannas. Keep watching them because they were responsible for that foundation that Indian cricket set and the trend Indian cricket set. So pivot for me is the lifeline. It's like, it's your breathing. If you don't breathe well, you cannot live well. So try and concentrate on your pivot if you're a young cricketer who wants to be able to get that extra bit from the surface.
Shishir bhai, next question. Obviously, you being an opening batsman would relate to that. As my coach, the great Sudhir Das from the East Zone, which I think you must be knowing Sudhir Da. So
Yes.
he was our coach in Jamshedpur, under whom I have learned my cricket. And he was very old-fashioned, and I wish that in today's time the coaches and the players also go to that format again to have a great technique and a sound technique. And he always used to advise me, because I myself was an opening batsman. He smell the ball, smell the ball. Can you just elaborate on this concept and the importance of coming close to the line of the ball and the playing?
So if Sudhir Bhai said smell the ball, it was trying to simplify a process. These coaches of the past had a great quality, and the quality was they kept it simple. They didn't complicate the game. They looked at cricket as a creative art. So when you simplify a system of teaching, it is easier to record it in your mind and visualize it. What he told you about smelling the ball was lead with the head. Now, if I tell somebody lead with the head, he may not understand, visualize what he's saying. But when I say so, or when your coach said to you, smell the ball, you are actually leading with your head. And when you lead with the head, when your head goes towards the ball, you're actually doing the same thing, smelling the ball. But the nuance of good batsmanship is about leading with the head and not falling over. So your head goes towards, if you saw Gavaskar bat in the good old days, he was always leading with the head. What it did was, there were ways of saying it, you smell the ball, smell the leather, go underground. There were various ways. In our days, the Marathi way of saying it was, Wakun khel, and bend and play. Everybody said bend and play. What did it mean actually? It meant the same thing. I mean, if you have to bend, you have to smell the ball. If you have to smell the ball, you have to lead with your method may be different, but the coach wants to say is the same.
Next question coming is the importance of wrist position for a fast bowler.
Very important. Uh, uh, you know, I've not been a bowling coach, nor have I been a coach, frankly, I must admit. But having watched bowlers all your life wanting to get you out, the bowlers with a good wrist position actually were the ones who knew what they would. When you were there playing the first over of a new ball, and you saw this bowler with a very good risk position, you knew exactly that this guy is out to get you out. He's out there to, he knows what he's doing. He knows when he wants to move the ball away. He knows when he wants to move the ball in. Uh, he's very sure of his processes because his foundations are very strong. His basic learning is strong. He's not leaving too much to chance. You know, there are bowlers who will have awkward wrist positions, and they can be equally awkward for you because they don't know what they're going to do. You know, sometimes you don't, as a bowler, if you don't have answers, how will the batsman have answers? But good wrist position will always help a bowler when he's going, you know, when he's losing rhythm or his release is not good, because again, it's going back to the basics, and basic, strong fundamental basics will always help you, especially in the times that you're doing badly, when you're not getting your shape as a bowler, you're not getting the right position of your arm or your wrist. That's when, you know, you're the basic education. It's like, you know, if you're a singer, if your Shastriya Sangeet, your Shastriya Sangeet training is being strong, then very rarely will you go off track. You know, aap sur mein hi gayenge. So similarly, if your basics are strong as a cricketer, you'll know how to come back. You will often go off track, but you'll come back.
Next question, Shishir bhai. Obviously, as the great Sunil Gavaskar always used to say, I have always listened to him, what he has said in the TV, but you are very fortunate to open with him. And he used to say, give the first hour of a cricket match to a bowler and the entire day is yours. So can you lay the emphasis of this wisdom to the young players who are watching, and the development of a patience basically in opening batsman? In today's time, we see temperament wise, that art is slowly fading away.
Yes, you know, of course, we grew up in a time where coaching was simple. There's not much gyan given. Today there are videos, there's biomechanics, there's a lot you can see about yourself. But I think what Gavaskar's theory was, and that was pretty much the way he played his cricket, was to focus on the ball, to focus on not pre-deciding anything. You see, आज आप हमारे साथ बैठ रहे हैं, बात कर रहे हैं. Sometimes if you decide, I'm going to speak this, you may not get an opportunity to speak that because it won't come up. So I think sometimes you need to decide after the ball, just when the ball is released, what to do. You know, and that is Gavaskar's always a theory, which I think he must have got from Merchant and, you know, the folklore of Vijay Merchant in the good old days. And it comes down as tradition. Then Gavaskar, obviously, in our time, we watched him. He was a numbers man. Obviously, Mumbai had this thing for big numbers. Anybody who had big numbers against his name got noticed. But it meant only one thing. Staying on the wicket does not mean blocking. You know, people have this misconception, ke block karo. No, staying on the wicket means rotating the strike. If you bat for 3 hours and score 5 runs, it is not going to do yourself or your team any good. What you need to do is risk. You cut your risk factor and rotate the strike. Batting, see, my whole problem is whether it is sport, whether it is work, whether it is anything, if you don't enjoy it, you're going to get bored and get out. You have to enjoy what you're doing. So when you're out there as a player, or, you know, when you're a leader, you enjoy the process. And the only way you can enjoy it is if you enjoy it, you know. And that is where I think Gavaskar tried to imbibe that in the future, saying you need to rotate strike, occupy the crease, watch the bowler, reduce your risks, but keep taking singles, you know. And if he always said, if you take 100 singles, you'll be on 100.
I just at this moment, I'll also take a moment in Facebook Live. I can see my cricket schooling coach, Shishir bhai, Mr. Khurshid Khan, is also watching us live. So I'll pass on my regards to Khurshid bhai. As a next question, Shishir bhai, is I always feel, as I always say, ki in many of the corporate interviews when I was in the employee side, I was working, ki the question was always thrown upon you have a legal qualification, but you don't have the management degree. So I always used to turn around and give them an answer, ki I have been a cricket player. So the cricket teaches leadership and management. In a real life, the decisions have to be taken. And most
Yes,
importantly, the cricket teaches the art of accepting a failure, improve upon it, and
yes,
overcoming it. So can
yes.
you just say how, as cricketers, this overcoming failures, first is accepting the failure, which once we grow up in a normal world, we the very fact that ये मैं करूँगा मैं अगर नहीं हुआ तो क्या होगा, that very concept of failure
Yes.
reduces many person in not overcoming the greatness of their potential.
So my whole take on this is, if you played sport and team sport, you know how to motivate others around you. Your failure, cricket is a very funny game where your failure has to coincide with somebody else's success for you to be kicked out of the team. It's not like a tennis match where you play well and he loses, or he plays well and you lose. If you want to play for India, the guy you want to replace has to fail and you have to be doing well. Similarly, in a team, I think sometimes that one crucial catch or that one crucial decision could be very important in your team winning, and nobody notices it. And sometimes you become the sort of you know the back the backroom hero. Nobody knows that you've been responsible, but somewhere you contributed. I've always believed that people in the reserves also have a great hand to play in a team's morale. Because sometimes you find that if a player is dropped, he's moaning, he's sulking, and he's not able to motivate the team, and because he's not in the action, and it's not a good thing for the team because it spreads a lot of negativity. So as a leader, I will always watch how my reserves behave. Are they good losers? See, if they don't make the 11, personally he's lost, so he's going to sulk. But if he keeps the motivation high in the team, saying, asking guys to, do well for the team, you know that he has something more to offer the team. And that is where I think, management books will teach you a lot of things that sport may not teach you. But sport will teach you far more things that management books won't teach you.
So in short, Shishir bhai, you are trying to say that sports builds a character. And
I'd like to think that.
Character is a very big word in today's time. If I have to take it to the next level, because academics can give us knowledge, but not
Yeah.
wisdom. On the other hand,
Yes.
sports gives us that soft skills, whether it's be leadership, motivation, team building, which comes naturally. And that's why it's very important for parents to ensure that the kids go into the sports.
I have a piece of advice for parents who want children to play. Make them play sport for the right reasons. Don't make them play sport because you get an opportunity to sit in your social circles and say my son is playing sport, because it is not an avenue for you to get social acceptability. Growing up to sport is like growing up to life. You need to understand that sport will teach him a lot of things which school books, management, Ivy Leagues may not teach you. So learn to play sport for the right reasons. I feel a little worried about today's parents because, in their way, they're ambitious, which is good for their children. But, the pressures they put on their children because of their passion for the child doing well puts a lot more pressure on the child, where he feels the pressure of letting his parents down. And when you do that, what you're doing is you're not allowing the child to flower and enjoy it. Why do you play sport? You play to enjoy it. So let's not forget that. That is the primary reason why children play sport. You also play sport to become adaptable to each other. I could be spending time with different kinds of boys. I learn to accept them, not be judgmental about them, accept them, because when I go onto the ground, we're all together. So there are a lot of hidden advantages, and that's for another day. But my advice is play sport because it will help you grow as an individual.
So Shishir bhai, I also have similar philosophy to what you said, and I sum it up in just 2 or 3 words. I say, when we used to play cricket, it was a passion. but now it's a fashion.
Yes, it's changed. It's changed, and
Because
I'm
the
very happy. I will give you an example. When I was growing up in Mumbai, I actually didn't understand the impact of cricket in Mumbai in those days. It meant a lot if you're playing under 19 cricket or something. So many a time you went to people's homes and they would ask you, they said, "What are you doing? Kya karte ho aap? Kya karte ho?" Marathi. They would ask you, and I say, "I play cricket." And you'd say, "Yeah, I play cricket." He said, "Yes, yeah, cricket, but what else? What are you doing in life?" Um, because cricket didn't have money, you see. So when you don't have money in a profession, it doesn't have social acceptability. Today, if you say that you're playing cricket or you're playing IPL, I can assure you the person will say, "अरे आपकी कुंडली दे दो ना, हमारे घर में कुछ हो सकता है, शादी की बात शुरू कर देंगे." Because that is on a lighter note. What I'm trying to say, the money comes with a sport. It brings a lot of social acceptability, a lot of dignity. And I think in our time, I think people played cricket for the same reasons they played passion, but there was no spin-off. There was no money. But I'm happy to see that fashion has come in because it's good for the game. As long as you play the game for the right reasons, I don't see a problem with anybody making millions.
well said, because we have seen in the past, I think my father always says that I was a small kid. So when I'm referring of that era, obviously what I've heard from my father, the biggest two gentlemen who role is very big in terms. One is Sunil Gavaskar in terms of making players aware ki what is professionalism in cricket as sports, and second is Jagmohan Dalmia in terms of bringing the money to the BCCI.
Absolutely. I mean, he did that. I mean, that is where you see, a leader takes the initiative. He sees the opportunity, and he makes sure that he can monetize that. He can deliver results. Uh, if you don't have administrators or leaders who can look at the other side of the game, then actually it makes a lot of difference. And while everybody will have the positives and negatives, the fact is that if leaders can capture the moment and make sure that they bring a business deal to the table, who ultimately benefited from that? The players, the broadcaster, the players, everybody who gets employment around it, and that is what the game has changed, and it's good. I have no problem with that. In fact, I'm happy that I just feel sad that I wish it had happened to the Wadekars, the Duranis,
Right.
the Guptes. They were also skilled, but
Right.
it's about being born in a different era, and maybe this is what the evolution of the game does.
Also, one more thing I will just add before going to the next question to the audience, especially the legal fraternity and the company secretaries. When we are discussing this, the role of Jagmohan Dalia and all that, in 1987, there was a very landmark Supreme Court ruling to the effect on the broadcasting rights, whereby the BCCI was allowed that monopoly of Doordarshan will no longer be there. So I will request every law students to read that judgment. Many legal things you will learn out of it. Next question, Shishirwai, coming your way. In today's time, you will well agree that technology plays a very important role for any sports, and cricket will no be exception to it. So if we are to look at it at the highest level, where let's suppose India is playing a series in Australia, what role does a technology play? In whole, if you are a coach or if you're a manager, how you will manage the technological aspects to the training strategy and all that of the players?
It's a very good question. I think I've been quite vociferous about this. Uh, the way you coach today has to be in line with technology. I'll give you a simple example. We were taught in our days, play forward if you're in doubt. If the ball is pitched up to you, play forward. If you're hit on the pad, nobody appeal. Today, the whole coaching process has to change because of the technology. Your style of coaching, your method of coaching has to be technologically friendly. So you have to be taught that if you do this, you will be given out. So there has to be a modification of the way you are taught how to play. It's about where you bowl the ball. You have tram lines. You're hit on the pad. So as a batsman, you should know what you can do to stay safe, which was different in our time. It's different now. You know that a lot of batsmen played forward or deliberately and were never given out. Today, it's not there. You know, you cannot cheat the technology. Technology will find you out any moment. So how you're coached will depend on technology and the adaptation to the technology that decides a batsman being out or not out. So I think techniques of coaching have to change, technique methods have to change, and that is what the game is about. It's about evolving, evolution. You talk about leadership. Leadership has evolved right from the time I said from the British Raj to now. Why not coaching? It has to. It's at the end of the day, we are grateful that it's a game about six stumps, bat and ball. But the way you play has to change. The way, because that will decide your success or failure, and the way you're coached is going to decide that. So it has a cascading effect everywhere, and technology is a huge part to the way you approach the game.
Very well said, Shishir bhai. Next question, I will like you to take current generation. It's something like today's people will be knowing the Sonu Nigams and the Abhijits, but they will perhaps not know the greatness of Mohammad Rafi or a Mukesh or a Kishore Da. So similarly, 70s, I think the two of the greatest batsmen ever to bless Indian cricket team was the great Sunil Gavaskar and Gundappa Vishwanath. If I'm not
Absolutely.
mistaken, those two are the greatest of that generation. No doubt we are the Vadekars, but I think Vadekar was more of the 60s and the 70s. But if you
Correct.
talk about the 70s generation, Sunil Gavaskar is opening series 700 plus in the great West Indies. It's unthinkable against those legendary fast bowler. No helmets, wickets were not covered after the day's plays, and the great magician Gundappa Vishwanath, both tiny in the stature but a big heart and the great at the skill. Can you just talk anything what you would like to share with the
So I
audience?
just like to compare what I spoke earlier about technique. You see, they grew up in an era where there was no helmet. Uh, so your technique decided whether you will get hit or not. You know, there was no second line of defense. If you got hit, then you went out of cricket. For example, Nari contractor.
Right.
You know, so your basic game was to the general gospel around coaches in those days. If your technique is right, you won't get hit. So you tried to upgrade your technique as you went along, because that was one way of not getting hit. It was also the only method. So Gavaskar and Vishwanath again were technically very sound. Uh, Not much has changed, honestly, between that era and, even if Sonu Nigam is a great singer, his basics are strong. If Rafi Saab was a great singer, its basics were always strong. If Daler Mehndi is a good singer, don't tell me that Daler Mehendi's classical background is not strong. So what I'm trying to say is that Ajay Chakravarti can sing, Bhimsen Joshi can sing. They all can sing very well, but the reason why they are great singers is because their foundation is strong. The basic techniques are strong. The basic, their upbringing in terms of the culture of music and the techniques, the nuances of music. Bradman era, whether you're from the Merchant era, whether you're from the Gavaskar era, or whether you Tendulkar era, or whether you're from Virat Kohli's era. The commonality of all these eras is that your basics are strong. So if your basics are going to be strong, you can be assured that you can play pre-COVID, post-COVID, you'll still deliver.
So now again, I'll just shift back to the subject in hand and try to relate it with the management. When in adversity, how can be a captainship and how the each team player should be rising above their requirement and the mental level. Basically, what this game I will take you back to the great Eden Gardens, India versus Australia. Dravid and Lakshman playing once in a century innings in 100 years, perhaps that kind of a pressure. What they were, only a cricket person who has played cricket will understand. The second innings, the way they batted, I think in last 100 years of the cricket history, I don't think any innings of this magnitude would have been played with the quality of bowling attack. And more important, apart from the bowling, is the fielding also. The great Australian side was a very good fielding also. So what does it reflect on the mental side?
See, Rishikesh bhai, I believe that a leader plays a huge part in this. You see, one of the problems of every sportsman or every individual, whether it's management, whether it is your profession, whether it is the corporate world, is team members feel insecure. It's for a leader to make a team member feel that he's there because he deserves to be there, not because somebody has pushed him. And you don't select players to drop them, whether it's in the corporate world, whether it's on the cricket field. You have to give the feeling to your player that you are here because you deserve to be here. So it's important to shrug that insecurity. I read a quote recently about the great Australian team under Steve Waugh. They played every game as if it was their last game. If somebody tells me that, tomorrow is your last day, I want to do everything I want to do here because it's my last day. I want to do everything that I like to do because it's my last day. So similarly, in sport, you've got to give your team the feeling that enjoy it because you deserve to be here. Don't feel insecure and make sure that you give it your best. I think Eden Gardens was a reflection of that. Eden Gardens happened after the event. When they went out against the odds, they didn't think about this record that they were going to create. They just went out thinking that let's give it our best. What happened after that was something that was not chartered. It wasn't orchestrated or planned. It just happened. But it happened because they gave it a good go. And that is where I think, leaders have to tell their guys, you might lose, but give it your best. Jaan laga do. That's what Kapil Dev said to his team when they got out for 183. Chalo, Javano, jaan laga do. What happened? 1983 changed the face of Indian cricket. It changed the commercial viability. It changed the respectability. It brought Indian cricket and gave Indian cricket a confidence to look people in the eye and say, we are world champions. And what did it come from? Just 3 words. Chalo, Javano, jaan laga do. That's what the game is about.
Shishir bhai, well said. I think in India, two things is everything above. One is the cricket and other is the films. So I would like to quote to what you just said. What I think if perhaps Amrish Puri would have been in that great Indian dressing room in the Eden Garden, he would have said to Dravid and Lakshman, "Ja ji le apni zindagi."
Absolutely. But his tone would be slightly different, I guess.
Right. Next question. As all eras, we in the 70s we had the Gavaskar and the Vishwanaths. In the 80s we had Dilip Vengsakar and the Mohinder Amarnaths. 2000 onwards we had great Sachin Tendulkar, Rahul Dravid, VVS Lakshman. And in current era, I think without doubt the two of the biggest batsmen in the Indian team is Virat Kohli and the Rohit Sharma. Would you like to stress something on these two gentlemen? How big they are players?
It's a privilege actually to have watched these two players. And I say this because both of them have one thing in common. They're very strong technically. Let's not forget that these two players have been nurtured in an era of helmets, where you tend to sometimes undermine technique because you know that if you get hit, you can still continue playing. But their technique has been solid. Their basic approach to batsmanship has been very solid and very sound. Run making comes as a byproduct for these things. The fact that they've given Indian cricketers and fans and followers a lot of joy is also with the way they have approached the art of batsmanship. Sometimes you walk in through the turnstiles. I mean, in our time, you walked into the turnstiles to watch players because knew that they would entertain. I mean, you can see Rohit Sharma probably, is very talented because he's got beautiful hands. And the problem with talented players who have a lot of time on hand is when they get out, it looks a little lazy. So he will disappoint you. But I always say this about Rohit Sharma since the day I saw him, that when he plays well, you will say, wow. And when he gets out, you will ask yourself, how? Because there is a lazy elegance about some players that gives the feeling that they're a little lackadaisical. But it's not the case. It is just the way they approach, you know, just the way they approach a situation. In Virat's case, there is, of course, he's a world beater. We all know that, but that hasn't happened by chance. He's worked towards it. So there's no denying that there's been a lot of hard work. There's no denying that there has been a lot of sacrifice, but there's also no denying that the basics are strong. And if you look at any great player from any era,
Yes, Shishir bhai.
can you hear me?
Yes, 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 please.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that the basic technique, the background, the process, and the hard work are something that are so common with every generation. And to me, that has been the most endearing fact about the.
Hello, Shishir bhai.
Yeah, I can hear you. I
Yes.
can hear you.
I think there is some audio visual issues. The next question coming your way: how you handle someone? This cricketing analogy I'll be putting, and then I'll be trying to link it with the management and the leadership side. You have players with a sheer brilliance, someone like a Krishnamachari Shrikant, who may not be a Gavaskar. In the modern era, you may be having someone like a Virendra Sehwag, who will perhaps not be the Dravids of the Sachins, but they are exceptional asset to any team on a given day. So as a captain or in a leader, I think in the corporate side also, we may be having someone who will not be from that old school in any profession, what I'm trying to say. Yet they're super brilliant. In short, they are maverick. How a leader should be dealing with them and how to manage them.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear it.
Yeah. So my whole take on this is that as a leader, you have to identify roles. You have to identify what role is this person going to deliver for me. Virendra Sehwag is not meant to bat for 3 days. You as a leader have to know that if he bats for 3 hours, he's going to win you a test match. And if he can do that 6 out of 10 times, you will win 6 out of 10 games, which is a good success rate. So don't try and, as a leader, change. You can't ask Nirupa Roy to play Madhuri Dixit. And you can't ask Madhuri Dixit to play, Nirupa Roy. But if you can ask Nirupa Roy to play the mother and Madhuri Dixit to play the heroine, you're doing fine. And that is where I think a leader needs to understand what he can do to get the best out of a certain individual to deliver for his team. Sometimes it's also important to know that somebody like, I'll give you a small example. Eknath Solkar was not a great guy for practice. So I know that Ashok Mankad never pushed him to practice because he knew on the day of the match he'll do fine. And there were guys he would ridicule them on purpose to make them work harder in the nets. So it's also identifying your areas that are going to motivate you. Those pressure points in your DNA that will motivate you. Sometimes you just have to, there is a story of Vivian Richards. They used to say, don't tell him anything when he comes to bat, because that will only motivate him. Leave him alone. Leave him alone, make him feel you're not important by not saying anything, and he will get out. He'll get bored. So as a leader, you have to identify what works for you and what your team. That is more important. So to answer your question, Virendra Sehwag, expect 3 hours, he'll win you. But you as a leader need to know that. You need to identify that role for him and tell him that, okay, you'll get out. I know that that's your game. But you do it 6 times out of 10, we are winning 6.
So in short, very well said. I think it all depends. If you are a jeweler, you should know the difference between a diamond and a glass. So the great
Absolutely.
captain or a great leader in any field, he should be knowing. And that work parak honi chahiye, as it always from the Pakistan side they say that the great Imran or anyone used to just pick up the great bowlers, and because they had that vision. Similarly in India we have lots of whereby the players have been picked up and backed by the captain, and in fact some of the players like Lakshman Shivarama Krishnan or Sadanand Vishwanath in the 80s, the 586 Benson and Hedges played perhaps because of the Gavaskar captainship.
Question, because you went in a pause mode. So can you just repeat this?
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is there are examples, plenty of examples, like in the 80s, Lakshman Shivarama Krishnan, great talented leg spinner, or the wicketkeeper Sadanand Vishwanath. They played brilliantly well under the captainship of Gavaskar.
Absolutely. I mean, that is what a leader does. He gets the best out of, each individual. Sadly, Ravi Shastri, one of the best captains not to have led India for a long time, had that quality. At a domestic level, Ashok Mankad had that quality. So, it's all about identifying what works best for your team. Sometimes you might have to take the out of the box route as a leader, because that's something that will work for you. Sometimes you will have to take a brave move, like, somebody like Sehwag. Saurav made him an opening batsman. He was never an opening batsman.
Right.
But I think somebody's got his sums right there, and said, if he opens and he bats for beg your pardon for you saying bloody, but if he bats for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, he'll win you a test match. So somebody got their sums right to ensure that he could create that role for him. So, yeah.
Yes, similarly, two examples coming to my mind. One is the 92 World Cup where Martin Crowe promoted Greg Batch and Deepak Patel to open. I think those two are very, and perhaps that was one of the reasons why New Zealand went up to the semi-final. But unfortunately, to the brilliant inning of Inzamam, New Zealand didn't reach the final.
And how can we forget Kalu Vittarana and Jayasurya?
I was coming to the 96 World Cup, right?
So you do path-breaking things which might raise an eyebrow. But if it works, you actually take them because you believe it will work.
Also, apart from the cricket player being, I've also been a little historian. So, and one thing which remains very naturally, I can remember 70s, 80s cricket thing also, though I was not born at that point of time. But what I'm trying to say is that one of the greatest, this management of the leadership trip is the Nehru Cup of 1989.
When Sachin bowled.
No, 1989, whereby Shrikant was captaining it, and he promoted Chetan Sharma as a one-down batsman, and Chetan Sharma scored 100 in that match.
That's right.
So many times, Sachin also during his captainship did many things, but it didn't turn out that way.
Yeah, but you see, as a leader, sometimes you are intuitive. Right. There are no reasons. There's no template for it. Right. I could just get up on a certain day and say, today I get this feeling that Rishikesh may be a number 8 batsman, but I'm going to send him opening because I have nothing to lose if he gets out early. So while you're backing your instinct and your intuition, you're also preparing yourself that in case it doesn't work, it's not going to harm my team so much. You talk about inspirational leaders, transformational leaders, leaders that motivate you, leaders that lead from behind. But there is intuitional leadership, which is very important. Sometimes you just believe that the office boy in your organization has such a pleasant smile and such a humble look to him, he'll probably go and sell better because of his demeanor than the MBA from a top management institute. And you say, yaar, tu jaake bech aaj. And if it works, you're the wizard. If it doesn't work, what happens? Nobody's going to say anything. But if it works, you will say, wow, what intuition, what leadership skills.
This particular question, I would like to perhaps close by quoting one of the cricket incidents, what I can recollect. I think 94-95 Australia versus Pakistan, maybe at Adelaide or Melbourne, the test match was there. Last over of the day, and Mark Taylor gave the ball to Shane Warne, and he bowled Basit Ali, who was batting on 70 or 80. So it may sound strange giving a last over of a day to a spinner.
Yeah,
So
but
this,
when you give Shane Warne the ball, you know that something's going to happen.
yes, Shishir bhai, but I completely agree. But Shane Warne was not Shane Warne during those times. He
Yeah,
became much. I
well,
completely agree.
yeah, but the thing about Shane Warne was when he, you knew that he was up to something when he had the
Right,
ball in hand. So,
right.
yes, I think credit to Mark Taylor, who I rate as one of the greatest captains in world cricket, uh, because he was again somebody who, who motivated. He was a liked person. So players played for him. He may not have
Affable
been
guy.
the affable human being and very liked by his teammates, but more importantly, not the greatest player in his team.
Right.
But there was some leadership quality about him that made players play for him, and that is
So
very important as a leader. You have to get guys to like you.
I completely agree. Perhaps you will said he was not such a big player. Perhaps the only inning
No,
which
not
I can really
no, a very good player. Let's
no
not
great player,
make any. No,
great player.
I
I'm
say
telling.
not in that team. He wasn't the greatest player.
Yes,
There
yes,
were
I agree. I agree. So the what I'm trying to say is that perhaps the only innings of Taylor what I can recount is 300 plus he scored in Pakistan, and yet he declared and he didn't went after the great Don's record. That
I think
showed
he was a couple of runs short or
yes,
whatever in
and he gave up. He didn't went. If he want, he would have gone. That also perhaps is a great leadership trait. Team goals
no
more important.
no also he would have liked to see Bradman's name on that list forever,
Right,
and that's that speaks about a man's character too, and his
right,
respect for history.
right. Shishir bhai, we are now in the last leg of our today's session. Perhaps I told you when I was doing this question, I will be little selfish and ask some of the cricket and anecdotes or stories what I would love to hear from you. How can I not ask you about one of the greatest game in the Ranji Trophy, Bombay Haryana final, which you were integral part. And I know it was a very hard luck loss for the great Bombay team. But how was that game? If you can run us through that, how was that game?
Well, it was a game that we got up on the wrong side of the bed because we dropped a lot of catches on day one. Um, they managed to put us under pressure. Uh, I would like to forget that match, but Sanjay Manjrekar, the captain, actually brought me on to bowl in the second innings, and I picked up 2 wickets and brought us back into the game. It was Vijay Yadav and Chetan Sharma. Uh, after that spell, I mean, after I got those 2 wickets, I told Sanjay actually that I've had enough. I've not bowled so much in my life. We had 4 fast bowlers: Raju Kulkarni, Salil Ankola, Abhi Kurvilla, and somebody else. I can't remember. So I said to him, I said, just get the fast bowlers and finish it. But he kept insisting I bowl. And yes, I keep joking with him even today that I said your respect for my bowling is far more than your respect for my batting, because you made me bowl 11 overs. I've never had a 11 over spell in my life, but yes, we managed to pull that back and come back into that game, and that was actually a trait of Bombay. But we were playing against somebody by the name of Kapil Dev, who didn't like losing, and he had smelt victory. When great players or great leaders smell victory, they make sure that they get over the finishing line, and it was a very close finish. But I think Haryana deserved to win because they played very well. They played that one run better than Bombay to win that match, and that's all you require to win a match. So it was one of those days where I think as Bombay players you didn't get over it for many years. But when you sit back after your cricketing days are over, you look back and say that there are a lot of things we did wrong as a team, didn't field well, didn't pick up catches, which ultimately may be a one-run victory. But these are things that actually add up to why you can't look at only the margin of victory. You have to be self-analytical and self-critical as a team to say that we did a lot of the processes wrong to lose the game. Forget the fact that it is a one-run loss.
Two supplementary questions arising out of it, Shishir bhai. First, the great Colonel batted very well in that match, if I'm not mistaken, for the Bombay side.
Absolutely.
Second point arising out of it, you are a very privileged person, I think, on this planet who have batted with both Sunil Gavaskar and Sachin Tendulkar. Because if I'm not mistaken, Sachin Tendulkar played that match.
Yes, yes.
Any memories of batting with Gavaskar and Sachin? What is the common
Uh,
trait or something?
well, it just tells you that you know. I I mean, let me talk about myself first. That I played with two great players, and that's been the biggest honor for me. Um, Also tells you that I played over two eras, which I'm grateful to the Almighty, and of course grateful to the selectors for having allowed me that. Um, what I can tell you about the two players is that both had tremendous desire and love for batting. Uh, Sachin Tendulkar, I think, was a finished product because of the hours of practice that he put in before he came into junior cricket. He just loved hitting the ball in the middle of the bat. So he was pretty much what you saw at the end of his career was just a finished product of what you had seen as a 15-year-old. Gavaskar's rise has been more about achieving greatness through understanding his own game. Gavaskar didn't have an easy time. He got 774 runs in West Indies, after which he's had 4 tours which haven't been great. He had averages of 27, 25 in a test series. So he's had to work. When you get success very early, it can be a positive and it can also be a negative. So, and in those days when they went to England, there were uncovered wickets. The ball was nipping around early summer. Stuff that is today's cricketers don't face. Uncovered wickets. John Price, John Snow, Jeff Arnold, Mike Hendrick.
Hadley,
Yeah,
Imran
Gavaskar had to
Sarfaraz.
Gavaskar had to work his way to greatness. So if you see Gavaskar, I think he had a great understanding of what would work for him. And in those days, with no coaching, no videos, etc., just watching a bit of footage and adapting must have been, education for himself. So both great players, both achieved so much, and both I think had one common thing, attitude towards the game, and that is loving batting, loving big runs, loving the experience of going out and playing. And of course, the fact that I was able to play with both has given me something to talk about for the rest of my life, and I'm actually quite honored to be doing that.
So in the fake end, Shishir bhai, now I'll pose a question little on a different level. Each time being talented also doesn't guarantee you the chance to come to the biggest stage. I think two or three names which come commonly to the persons who follow our domestic cricket. One is the great Padmakar Shivalkar. I have heard lots of story about him from my father. Second is Rajendra Goyal from Haryana. And I was very fortunate that I have, at a very young age, I have read a book of Sunil Gavaskar Idols. So in that also, persons who have not played for India and you are getting covered along with the likes of Viv Richards, Zaire Abbas in that Idol book speaks a lot about talent of these two gentlemen. And maybe in modern era, a player which is coming to my mind again from the Bombay is Amol Majumdar. Perhaps was unlucky not to come for the Indian team. Your views, ki how a person should be when you are not, because in today's time I am asking, players are at least fortunate to get an IPL stage. During those days, that was also not possible.
It's a very good question, and it's also a test of one's ability to cope with a certain amount of rejection, which happens. As a leader, it is also important for you to tell your players many a time that performance may not be gratified with results. Because a lot of people are at stake. There are shareholders, there are board of directors. As a leader, you are only there on the ground. You are there to motivate. You are there to execute. But some decisions are taken not at your level. They are taken at the shareholders level, the board level, and sometimes rejection is a pill that you have to swallow. But my advice to all of them, and I have no right to advise these guys because they've achieved so much, is take a lot of pride in what you've done, because it's a lot that you've done. yes, you will feel that you should have got more. And every human being feels that. Uh, Somewhere deep down, you feel you could have got more. But look at it the other way. Look at your cup half full rather than half empty, because you cannot live with that frustration all your life. And these guys have achieved a lot. I know Shivalkar loves singing. He's a great fan of Mohammad Rafi. Uh, Music has helped him cope with a lot of disappointment. So I think Rafi Saab is within him. He sings a lot of Rafi. Goel Saab again is humble, but they also must remember they were born at a time there was another artist who was around, and that was Bishan Bedi. Amol Mazumdar was born at a time there was Rahul Dravid, Saurav Ganguly, VVS Lakshman, Sachin Tendulkar. That doesn't make him any less of a player. It's just that in a sport like cricket, your success has to coincide with somebody's failure. I mean, if you look at Azharuddin coming into the Indian team, scoring 300s, he came in because Sandeep Patil was going through a lean trot. And Sandeep was dropped. And after 300s, nobody talked about Sandeep Patil. So, timing is very important, as in cricket, so in life. So one has to accept that timing plays a huge part in somebody's success or somebody not getting success. I don't call it failure. I say not getting the success that you deserve. And I think, like I said, I want to reiterate, I don't have a right to talk about all these great players because they're great players. I mean, whether they played for India doesn't matter to me. They will still remain great players. And that as a sports lover is more important to me than, how many test matches he played or how many one days he played.
Well said, Shishir Bhai. Before proceeding to the two last questions, you just mentioned the great Mohammad Azharuddin. Two of the innings which I can recollect as the greatest of Azhar one was in Eden Gardens against South Africa. I don't remember the exact match where India was losing terribly against Lance Klusener, was when he scored an innings which no one can. He was playing fast bowlers of the caliber of Donald and Klusener, like he's playing some spinners. At the will hitting in cover, the same ball going through the mid wicket the next ball.
Yes.
And the second one is he has played in South Africa along with the Sachin, whereby both of them scored 100 odd plus. That was the artmanship at the highest caliber.
So I'll give you a little trivia on these two innings. I spoke to Azhar a while ago, maybe a year ago, and we discussed these two innings. And, it has a lot of relation to adaptability. You adapt suddenly on the day of the event, whether it is in your court. Suddenly you see a whiff of a trend and you say, okay, I'm going with it. Azharuddin was actually struggling before that innings. That 100 he got in Eden Gardens. And he had a word with, I think, Zahir Abbas, if I'm not mistaken. And apparently Zahir Abbas told him that stand behind, wait on the back foot, and stand on off stump. Because your kind of play, you will not get hit on the pad because you beat the ball. So you're ready, you're ready for action before the ball is bowled. And if it is up, you're quick enough to get onto the front. And he said that I just adapted. So I said, did you practice it in the net? He said, no, I just went there. I felt this is what I need to do. And it worked and he got 100. Because when things start going right for you, everything, your rhythm, your head, your hands, everything goes right. And that's what he did. And it's not a lot of things in life, and I'm relating it to, say, a management situation. You may practice a lot of things, but on the day of the big event, you might do something that are out of what you practice. And Azharuddin did that.
I very well recollect because still when you are telling, I have a goosebumps and I can recollect that Azharuddin with this tall figure just landing back with his white helmet and just playing that chabuk shot. I can when you're telling each and everything, I can see in front of me.
No, because these are things that stand out and he remembers this.
Right. And as an fellow opening batsman, Shishir Bhai, I always did that, and I'm very sure there were many innovations which you would have done, you would have seen with other players. Especially when I was playing a left-arm fast bowler who is coming, many times we are not able to read the swing because of the angle of the ball.
Angle, yes, yes.
So when I was batting side on, suddenly I changed and I became open chested to have my stance something like what Javed Miandad used to have, open chested stance. And I was able to play him easily. So that adaptability, rightly said by you, in any field and especially in cricket, on the spot we have to decide.
Yeah, sometimes you take a call on the given moment, and you put all your theories and your textbook
Right.
knowledge aside, and uh, it works because you believe, not because you believe it works, you believe that this is the best solution to the current problem. And if it comes good, and generally when it comes good, you feel, wow, I've been a wizard and I've been a master. It's a master stroke, but there's no such thing as master stroke. Necessity is the mother of invention. You invent it because it's necessary for you.
I
Yes, afterwards
completely
you can say that I've got a cricketing mind and I've got a great brain. It's all, everybody would like to say that, because who doesn't want to listen to good things? The
and if it
fact is, when you do it,
And if it doesn't turn out the way, it looks very silly. The one example which can come to my mind is the 1987 World Cup final, Australia-England, Mark Getting playing a reverse sweep.
yes, absolutely. But he had his thinking right. He wanted to get the ball off, or disrupt length, the line of the bowler. He got out. Uh, but today, what the reverse sweep is a part of your attire, no?
Right. So I think, Shishir bhai, with that, I would like to end today's session. In case you have anything further to add, you would like to add,
No,
Shishir?
it's been very interactive. I hope I've been able to add value to so many people who have joined in. And of course, thank you, Rishikesh Bhai, for having me here, because uh, speaking to you, I've learned, and listening to all the questions, I can assure you I've learned a thing or two about the game, about life, and of course, that's what we're here for, to keep learning.
So before ending, I would just like to state something about Shishir bhai. In the beginning, I have not stated that. I wanted to keep that a person who has achieved so much in just 10 to 11 years of a career. He debuted in the tender age of 19. When I'm saying tender in today's time, making a debut at the age of 19 may not be a big thing. But when Shishir Bhai in the early 80s made his debut, I think not early 80s also, the beginning of the 80s, at the age of 19, coming into any team, especially the team of the stature of a Bombay, requires a big talent. Otherwise, you cannot be there. Second, exiting the cricket at the peak of the career at the age of 29 itself is again a very big decision. And I always say that, Sushir Bhai, that only cricketer which comes to my mind in the international is Sunil Gavaskar, who retired at the peak in 1987. Perhaps he could have played till 92. Second is
I want to interrupt here and
sure,
just tell
sure,
you
sure.
that Gavaskar retiring is after 10,134 runs. So there is a slight difference, but thank you for the comparison. I'll take that. The fact of the matter is that, in Gavaskar's case, it has to be no comparison. It has to be a mention in isolation.
Right, I completely agree. Just before ending, Shishir Bhai, you have played various roles, and Don Bradman always said one thing, which my coach Sudhir Das has taught me: if you can't play cricket, at least look like one. But with great level of pride, I can say, Shishir Bhai, you have not only played cricket like the great player, but also have conducted yourself post that, which any cricketer would be proud of, or any sportsman, being a thorough gentleman. I would not like to repeat the many of the stands, bold stands you have taken, whether as a selector or in some other matters. It reflects your character and as a thorough gentleman, as after all, cricket is known as a gentleman's game. And Shishir Bhai, I am very sure the youngsters who have watched today's session would have learned a thing or two from you. In case they have not, I'll make sure that today's session is going in the YouTube also. It will be uploaded. They can come over there and they can learn a thing or two. And Shishir Bhai, again, on behalf of Udan Saluters, I thank you very much for sparing your valuable time out of your busy schedule and devoting to us.
Thank you so much, Rishikesh Bhai. It's been a pleasure to be here. And I just want to tell all of you all, and especially the youngsters, that we are not perfect. Nobody is perfect. We are all fallible. We all make mistakes. We also make errors in judgment, like most lawyers and chartered accountants. But the idea is to learn from our mistakes and move on. Let it not be one of the reasons that will stunt your growth, because with every mistake, with every fall, you will learn and you will walk better. So, failure is a part of your existence. Just try and cope with it and be positive about the future.
Great lines of wisdom coming. Thank you very much, Shishir Bhai, and I thank you all as we sign it off. Shabba Khair.
Thank you so much. Shabba Khair. God bless.